Thanks for staying with us. Time now for African News with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, at least a dozen bodies are discovered in a mass grave and covered at a former Seleka rebel military barracks in Bangui. Meanwhile, the revenge attacks driving Muslims out of the country sees France's defence minister slam Christian vigilantes as the enemies of peace. Also, tensions are on the rise in South Africa ahead of May's general elections. Police fire rubber bullets as rival rallies between supporters of the ruling ANC and the opposition Democratic Alliance turn violent. And the government of Democratic Republic of Congo sets out amnesty conditions for former M23 rebels. The most extreme abuses won't be overlooked, but insurgents holed up in Uganda have 6 months to apply for a pardon. First up, African Union peacekeepers on Wednesday made a grim discovery at a military camp in the capital of Central African Republic. At least a dozen bodies were found in a mass grave in central Bangui. The barrack had been occupied by former Seleka rebels behind last year's takeover. Now, they're mainly Muslim, and the chaos sparked by their coup has triggered a wave of revenge attacks against Muslims and an exodus that rights groups say amounts to ethnic cleansing. On a visit to Bangui today, France's defence minister said that the Christian anti-Balaka militia behind the reprisal violence were the main threat to peace in the country. France 24's Catherine Norris-Trent brings us more.
The Central African Republic's new president, Catherine Samba-Panza, was met by an adoring crowd, and she came to Mbaiki, south of Bangui, for her first visit outside the capital since becoming interim leader. She was accompanied here by the French Defence Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian. They were, of course, being briefed on security measures, the progress of French troops in the country. The French Defence Minister said he was pleased with the work so far, but acknowledged there was a long way to go.
We need more time. It has been a long journey, a very long journey. If our soldiers and the MISCA forces hadn't been present, there would have been mass killings. It's not the case, but there is still a lot of work to do to reach the end of the road.
The President, Catherine Samba-Panza, then addressed the crowd. She spoke both in French and in Sango, the local language, so that everyone would be able to understand her. She said that this country must remain united. We've, of course, seen a massive exodus, notably of the Muslim population, heading towards the north of the country, fleeing in fear. Catherine Samba-Panza said that there was no question this country would become officially divided.
I have reaffirmed my will not to give up 1 inch of the territory that has always been united and secular. So, concerning this issue, I think we'll be firm and take measures that are needed, so no desire for partition can prosper.
There are still many armed groups throughout the Central African Republic, and with only around 7,000 French and African troops here to enforce security, it's going to be a long battle to try and disarm the anti-Balaka militias still stationed in much of the country.
Catherine Norris-Trent there for us. Well, South Sudan said that it's arrested around 100 army officers from President Salva Kiir's Dinka group and vowed that anyone found guilty of atrocities or abuses during recent inter-ethnic violence will be held accountable, regardless of their origins. Now, thousands have been killed in 2 months of fighting between the army and rebels backing former vice president and his NUER ethnic group. A new round of peace talks began in Ethiopia this week, despite repeated violations by both sides of a ceasefire agreement. Juba says Riek Machar's fighters are out of control and forcing a response from the military.
There is no really what you would say that the government is violating the ceasefire, because we have a command control of a normal national army. The problem has been the rebels, and we believe when the message trickles to them, maybe they will listen to their leader.
Democratic Republic of Congo's offered amnesty to former members of the defeated M23 rebel army. The order excludes more serious crimes like genocide, torture or sexual violence. But the UN's welcomed the move as a way of moving on from the conflict, which began in April 2012 and ended last November. Around 1,300 ex-M23 have been left in limbo in a camp in Uganda since then. They'll now have 6 months to apply for the offer of a pardon. Police fired rubber bullets and stun grenades at supporters of South Africa's ruling party on Wednesday after rallies between rival groups turned violent. ANC activists reportedly started throwing bricks and Molotov cocktails at officers who were standing between them and voters backing the opposition Democratic Alliance.
Stun grenades in the streets, used by police to separate supporters of the ruling ANC, seen here in yellow, from an opposition rally. Several were arrested. The opposition Democratic Alliance had wanted to take their march, calling for jobs, right up to ANC headquarters, angering party supporters.
We are here to come and defend our revolutionary house, that is the Trula House. If the DA want to talk to us about governmental issues, they must go to Parliament.
The opposition instead marched to a nearby square where ANC supporters were waiting for them, armed with bricks and Molotov cocktails. The DA fled, saying they had been denied their right to protest.
So our job as the official opposition is to expose the bogus promises in the ANC's manifesto and to put our alternative offer on the table. We have a right to do that. We have permission to do that.
The 6,000 DA activists were marching to mock the ANC's promise to create jobs when unemployment remains at 25%. ANC supporters still see the opposition party as a front for white interests.
Who the hell is Zina to come and tell us how we must rule our own country? We've been here more than him. The meantime, when our black brothers and sisters, they were flew away. Where was she?
With 3 months to go before the general election, sitting President Jacob Zuma remains favourite. But the race looks to be the most competitive since the end of apartheid, as increasing numbers of black voters lose patience with the ANC.
Faced with growing dissent within his own PDP party, Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan fired 4 cabinet ministers on Wednesday. The Minister for the Niger Delta, Aviation Minister, Police Minister and Junior Finance Minister were all asked to step out. Some see the move as an attempt by Jonathan to forge a united party behind him before making a re-election bid next year. The PDP suffered a wave of defections to the opposition recently. Jonathan faces pressure to stand aside before 2015, as he had originally promised he'd do. He now says it's too soon to discuss his political future. Security's been stepped up in the Malian capital, Bamako. The UN mission in the country and some foreign governments believe the risk of an extremist attack there is rising. The situation also remains worrying in the north of Mali, where there have been recent ethnic clashes. Nicholas Romain has more.
Bamako residents have all noticed it. Security has been greatly reinforced in recent days. The UN mission in Mali and some embassies warned the authorities about the risk of a possible attack in the capital. Cars are systematically searched.
This is totally normal. It's for the security of the people that they are doing this.
This is crap. They cannot possibly check all the vehicles in Bamako. They should not do this on the bridge.
The police also carry out identity checks.
The goal of all this is to prevent terrorist activity in Bamako.
Until now, Bamako has been safe, unlike northern Mali. 1 year ago, a French military intervention chased jihadists out of northern Mali, a region they occupied in 2012. But some small groups still operate there. In September, a suicide attack in Timbuktu killed 2 civilians. Since then, there have also been suicide attacks in Tessalit, Menaka and Kidal. In November, 2 French journalists from RFI, Ghislaine Dupont and Claude Verlon, were assassinated near Kidal by Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. The situation is still unstable. This week, the Red Cross said 5 Malians, including 4 ICRC employees, were kidnapped on the road between Kidal and Gao. And in recent days, there have been clashes between Peul and Tuareg communities in some areas of northern Mali.
Now, Ghana's government's come in for some tough criticism at home recently for some of its recent economic measures. In order to meet the challenges posed by rising foreign debt and a huge public sector wage bill, VAT's recently been hiked to 17.5% on banking services and petrol subsidies have been cut. Well, households are feeling the pinch. But speaking to France 24, President John Dramani Mahama acknowledged the measures may weigh on Ghanaians' pockets for now, but insisted that it is in the country's long-term economic interests. Take a listen.
And so it's not business as usual. This government is serious about the reforms we're carrying out. And I believe that it will yield dividends, in the medium term. But certainly in the short term, we need to continue to make these adjustments and make these corrections. And that is going to come with pain, no gain. And it is only through that pain that eventually will create a consolidation that would move more of our people out of poverty and create a better, situation for Ghana's economy to thrive.
Well, that wraps up African News from me for this hour. I will be back with more in 60 minutes, though. Stay with us. More news and headlines coming up from around the world after a short break. Take care.